And welcome to the Comic Corner here on the Agents of Fandom Network, where we do comic book news, reviews, and interviews with some of the biggest writers in the business and what we call our indie inklings, showcasing some cool Kickstarters that are out. We have today RD Murphy, buddy of mine here in Connecticut, who has a new book coming out now. Living a Fantasy Book 1 on Kickstarter. RD, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Damon.
Of course, been promising you this, and we made it happen. You can read the first little book out on your Instagram link, I believe.
Yep, on
That's a
Global
lot of fun.
Comics for free.
That's a lot of fun. This first book, it follows a wizard who kind of morphs with his pet owl, and the owl takes over, and some crazy shenanigans happen. It's a bit of an anthology then throughout. Tell me, what is this book about?
Well, you did a good job explaining it. Here, I can show you. This is like how I pitch it to people when I'm at like a convention or something. So this, my lovely fiance Sarah made for, or she had it commissioned to be made for me. So this is like the main character of the book. As you said, he's an owl. He was the pet of a wizard. There's a miscast spell. So the owl, whose name is Otis, has the wizard's body and powers now. So he's like the main character. He's like the through line throughout like the series, but there's like other characters. Like as you said, it's kind of like an anthology. There's like vignettes. It originally started as like gag comics that I did in college, and I've kind of just been like expanding it out, like kind of continuing the stories of like these other characters and like seeing where they go.
This thing has 150 pages, a bunch of different little stories throughout. Is there any in particular, like you said, this is a bit of an anthology. I did enjoy the vampire story. Very fun. Is there any that stick out that you're most excited about, that you're most proud of?
I mean, Otis is like the good like pitch, like a good hook to get people. I mean, he's an animal, like an anthropomorphic character too, which I feel like is like easier to draw and I feel like it catches the eye. The character in the first issue, there's Quirkus Quickshot, who's like the elf that kills a Pegasus unicorn by mistake. I feel like he's the one that I have the most fun like going back to because I just kind of keep like adding shit onto him and like kind of putting him through the ringer. He's probably like my second favorite, and also the vampire. I'm excited to like him and like the love triangle that he's in with like the werewolf and the girl. They're kind of like background characters that I want to keep kind of going back to just to kind of make the world feel a little more like lived in. But yeah, they're always funny for like a quick little gag in the background of a comic.
So how did this finally come together? You said this was some story ideas you thought of in college, kind of jot them down. Now it's all come together. How did this all finally come to be one big happy book?
Well, yeah, so it started as like just a prompt from my illustration professor to make a comic based on an animal and a human like anthropomorphic character. So I came up with Otis, and then it's kind of just been like me. I mean, like I like to explore like tropes and like parodies of things. I did Turtle Man, my other comic series, which is like kind of my way of like punching up at like the different superhero tropes that are like always happening in superhero comics. This is kind of like has just been like my vehicle for exploring the tropes in the fantasy genre. So it's honestly just like whenever I think of something that I want to like make fun of or explore in a comic regarding fantasy tropes, I'll just like make something for that, and then it's kind of just been like almost like a stream of consciousness type approach, I guess, of like slowly building it up. And then luckily Apollo City Comics, which is a small indie publisher, I've met them through like the different cons that I've been at recently, and just kind of became friends with them, and they were willing to help me publish it under their label and get the Kickstarter going with them, which has been
I was
super
going to
helpful
bring
because
up.
I don't know anything about
Yeah.
Kickstarters, but they've been very helpful for that.
I was gonna bring up Turtle Man, because that's how you introduced me to your work, which is a very fun book about a guy who just kind of wants to be a superhero. And like you said, it goes into certain tropes. How'd you get into that one in particular? Because this is now, I believe, like your second or your third real push at a full book.
Yeah, well, with Turtle Man, it was actually the same illustration professor. I had to do like a senior project, and I did it with his help because he makes comics also. His name's Evan Kling. He's a great like illustrator and comic creator. But yeah, so I had to come up with like a senior project. I thought of doing like a superhero parody, and I did the first issue of Turtle Man, which I brought to you and the people at BoomTube. And then the fact that like you guys were like interested in it kind of like propelled me to like keep making them. Um, and then I like it when like with Turtle Man, I like the idea of it being kind of like a mini series, like a short, like a 5 issue, you know, just to have like a book and like have something that's finished. So that was like a big accomplishment for me when I was able to finish that. And then with Living a Fantasy, it's a similar thing where like I want to, you know, finish volumes. Like I mean, I have one book now of it. I'm planning on doing more. But like this is kind of my thing that I'm planning on working on for like the next few years. Like I feel like this one I'm going back to Turtle Man too. I'm doing Absolute Turtle Man. But Living a Fantasy, I feel like there's enough like material there that I think I can, tell more stories in that universe.
Now, one of the fascinating things about your work in particular, and this does happen on Kickstarter every now and then, is you are both the writer and the artist. So, what challenges have you had to overcome with that?
Um, Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of benefits personally, just because I feel like it's like easier to like I don't I don't know. Like, I've tried to like collaborating with people, and I do enjoy it, but there's something about like just having full control and kind of like having that direct link with like the audience where like it's like exactly like my vision, I guess.
Mm.
But there are like, you know, um I'm constantly like asking people for feedback and what they think of it because like it is you're kind of like in a bubble, I guess, while you're doing it. So it's helpful to like, I'll ask like my fiance, I'll ask my brother, I'll ask the people at Apollo City their opinions, which is super helpful because I want to know. My biggest thing too for like making comics is I just want to make sure it's like the thing I'm trying to say is getting across, and I think sometimes that is tricky when you are collaborating with people because you want if you're like the writer and you have an artist working with you, they might not necessarily be interpreting it the way that you're imagining it. But that's also nice because it's nice to see like other people's interpretations of like of your writing. But I personally I like doing it all myself. I feel like that's just like how I like to work.
So, you mentioned this is your first Kickstarter, your first real push at a bigger
Yeah.
book for a wider audience. I was gonna say, what challenges do you have for that? Because this is not like you have you typically gone, you go to like a local comic shop, you go to local conventions, you're trying to sell them out individually. This is a bigger thing for you. This is like that next step.
Yeah. It's very ambitious for me. I'm a little, I'm curious how it's all gonna go down. But it's just been like a great opportunity to because I always see people doing Kickstarters and I wanted to do one for a while, but like it's just like another beast for me. And I feel like for me, I like doing like the artistic side of it, like the writing and the drawing. But like the more business side is not something that I have a ton of experience with, which is why it's very nice that Apollo City has been helping me out with it and like getting the Kickstarter going, helping me figure out promotional stuff for it. Um, yeah, I I'm planning on like doing more stuff in the comic industry. So it was inevitable that I would have to do a Kickstarter at some point.
Artistically, you have a very unique style. Is there anyone that you would like take influences of? Or it's just this is you?
Um, a an influence that like a lot of people aren't familiar with, I guess, for me is do you know what you probably know One Punch Man?
Yeah.
The guy that made One Punch Man, because every once in a while there's like you'll see in One Punch Man, it'll go to like a very like amateur kind of style.
Mhm.
And then it'll switch to like the more, polished, like classic anime manga style. the guy who created it is the one that does like the amateur style, and that's how it started as like a webtoon that he just drew himself, even though he's not like a trained artist. His name's One. He was like a big influence for me when I was reading One Punch Man and like his original version of it, and his own series Mob Psycho, which he writes and draws himself. And again, it's not very like polished or like professional, but just the way that he draws, like he conveys emotion and action just in like such a great way. And I feel like for me, that was like when I was first like, years ago trying to get into like figuring out my style and figuring out how to make comics, that was like a, a big inspiration where it's just like you don't really need to be like Jim Lee or Alex Ross to be able to make a comic. As long as like your idea again is like coming through and people are understanding the jokes or whatever the message is, that's what's most important.
Living Fantasy Book 1 out now. You can help support this Kickstarter on Kickstarter. The link is in the description, so go check it out. RD, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck. It is a very fun book, everyone. Go check it out. Go support it.
Yes.
RD, thank you once again for joining us. Best of luck going forward. And thank you all for tuning in.